welcome to a Talk IT tutorial. So this is going to be the C++ mesh model viewer, and we're going to be doing lab 3. Lab 3 is going to be called creating the main function. So GLUT has a special thing where it hits main, and then it will then run GLUT functions that will start everything up for you and makes everything a lot simpler. Which is the whole idea of GLUT. It's an easy way to get into graphics. So lab 3 created the main function. This is where we actually get to work with some code. Great, this is what we wanted. So what am I going to do? I'm going to paste this in to start with, and then I'm going to go through and explain. This one's going to be a lot of explaining, and it's sort of the key understandings for the rest of the tutorial, really. So we have a main function here. Just do that. Okay, the red's normal, that's what we expect to see. And here, so then put these above. Okay, so these are all of our functions that we can call. There you go. Okay, what does each function do? So what are we looking at here? So this is our main method here. So we've got argc, the number of values that are in the array, and then argv, the actual array itself. So GLUT init. So if we do pass stuff in, we can actually have GLUT initialize those. But then our sort of standard one here is GLUT init display mode. So we're going to use red glue, green alpha, GLUT double. I've got sort of more explanations of what these are. So we've got RGBA mode and double buffering. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. I go into a bit of explanation what double buffering is. GLUT init window size. 500 pixels by 500 pixels. Create window, create a top level windows. Create a top level window inside our Windows operating system. GLUT display functions. Okay, so this is where we have sort of callbacks. So create the window, yeah, brilliant, and that's going to be its name. We're going to initiate GL. I'll go into more explanations of what that is later in the lab. So the GLUT display function. So when we want something displayed, it will call this function. When the window is reshaped, it will call the reshape function. When a keyboard is pressed, button is pressed, it will call the keyboard function. When a special keyboard button is pressed, so such as arrow keys, it will call the arrow keys. Motion function, so again, this is when the mouse is moving or click down. Idle function, so this is where we have none of these inputs. What do we do when we're just idling? And then GLUT main loop, which is sort of effectively start everything off now. We've defined everything, start it all up. So here are those functions that I'm talking about, effectively callback. I don't think I really need to go through those, you can read those in depth. Okay, so then for the init GL, so initiate GL, we're going to need to put in just a few array values at the top here. Okay, so we've got some things that we're going to use for lighting. I'll go into a bit more of explanation because I've got a graphic at the bottom of this lab which helps explain it an awful lot. So let's add in our initiate GL function here. I've just copied too much. Okay, let's just grab the init GL part of that. Okay, so now that red's gone, which is brilliant, that's what we wanted. So that's gone. Now I need to just go through explaining this one a little bit. So this has a lot more technical things to it. So there's information on what the values are at this link. So GL shade models, how things are interpolated, clear color. So what are our red, green, blue and alpha values to be used when the buffer's cleared? I think 0 is probably the best if we want to clear it, but you can obviously mess around and set it so it can be a little bit lighter. So 1 being full color, so effectively RGB can go between 0 and 1. Clear depth, so the depth buffer, it just clears that. GL enable, so we have lots of different things here. So depth test, so we can do depth comparisons. Color materials, lighting, we set up a light, so this is something that we can use to create specular lighting, ambience, diffusal. I'll go into that one in a little bit later. GL normalize, so this is how light gets reflected, and we work out the normals off the objects we create, and it gives more realism to it. So GL color material, so this is what we actually, how we want things to be rendered. So we say we want front and back, and we also want ambient and diffuse. So we want it to be, the color to be always not just what we're looking at, but also on the back, so it's happening all the time. And then ambient and diffusal, go through that in a bit. You can see the graphic there. GL hint, not massively used. You can read into that one yourself a little bit. So going into sort of how colors work a bit. So ambient lighting, diffusal, specular, and then when we combine them all, what we actually get from it. So ambient is a fixed intensity and fixed color light source that reflects everything equally. So with ambient, effectively you see the color of the object, but it doesn't really give it any sort of 3D effect to it. So diffusal, fixed intensity, fixed color light source, but it doesn't affect all objects equally. So it depends on what the direction of the light is and what the angle is of the light is hitting it at. So you would expect, it's effectively the sun. If you were to stand in the sun, one side of your body is going to be lighter and one side is going to be darker. And then specular, so this takes into account the viewer of the light, so where you're viewing it from. So if that light is reflecting into your eyes, such as a mirror, or you've seen it on car doors and stuff, you see specular highlights because that light source is angling at that point and coming into your eyes. So it creates these highlights on the object, and when you combine all of these together, you get what looks like 3D objects. So that's some lighting for you. What we can then do is just run this. What we should see is just a blank window effectively. We haven't created any objects, but we just want to build it and make sure that GLUT has created our window, it's named correctly. Okay, this is good, so it's kicking off the console application. And there's our window. So we've got Mesh Model Viewer, OpenGL Framework. That's what we expected, and from Visual Studio it's using 30 megabytes of memory at the moment. That will go up as we start to build objects, and you can actually mess around with that, and you can see what uses the most memory in processing. So that's that. That's lab 3. I hope you continue on to lab 4 where we start to actually mess with some of the graphics. Thank you for listening.